Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 2, will presenting Visual Psychology for Task 1B. Group 2.
Introduction. How is the information from the eye coded in neural term into the language of the brain and consistent to the experience of surrounding object? What the eye do is to feed the brain with the information coded into neural activity, signs of electrical impulse which by their code, and therefore the pattern of the brain activity represent the object. When we check out something, the pattern of neural activity represent the thing to the brain. No internet picture involved, but just let's write that there are pictures inside the brain.
Visual system.
There are three parts in visual system. First is anatomy of human eye. Second is visual accommodation and visual cortex. For anatomy of human eye means light enters the eye through the cornea, a clear cover that guards the eye and begin to focus and catch the arriving light. For example, when we enter a dark movie theater from a sunny day, our muscle in the iris will open the pupil and allow more light to enter our eye. This process will take around 20 minutes for our eye to adapt to a new situation. Next is visual accommodation. Visual accommodation is the process of shifting the curvature of the lens to keep the eye focused on the retina when the light enters. The image projected on the retina is flat. However, our final observation of the image will be three-dimensional instead of flat. For example, if we focus something in front of our retina, we claim that the person is near sight. However, when we focus behind the retina, we claim that the person is far sight. So, the solution for this problem is to wear tools. There are two types of tools that we can wear, which is contact lens and sunglasses. The number 3 is visual cortex. Visual cortex is made up of specialized neurons that turn the sensation they obtain from the optic nerve into expressive images. A hole or blind spot in human vision is created because there are no cells at the area where the optic nerve leaves the retina. For example, when both of our eyes are widely open, we will not experience a problem because our eyes are constantly moving, and one eye will catch for what the other eye did not catch.
Brain and vision.
It is defined as an organ that serves as the center of the nervous system in all vertebrate and most invertebrate animals. It is located in the head, usually close to the sensory organs for senses such as vision. Psychologically, brain exerts centralized control over a body's other organ. They act on the earth of the body by controlling the movement of patterns of muscle activity and by driving the discrete secretion of chemicals called hormones. Meanwhile, vision is defined as one of the resulting visual perceptions other than eyesight and sight. It is the ability to interpret the surrounding environment using light in the visible spectrum reflected by the objects in the environment. This is different from visual acuity, which refers to how clearly a person sees. The relationship between brain and vision can be seen in the applications of the visual system between the two organs, the brain and the eyes. Firstly, the eye functions like a camera. The iris and the pupil control how much light to get into the back of the eye, much like the shutter of a camera. When it is very dark, our pupils get bigger, letting in more light. When it is very bright, our irises constrict, letting in very little light. The focused light ray are then directed to the back of the eye onto the retina, which acts like the film in a camera. The cells in the retina absorb and convert the light to electrochemical impulses, which are transferred along the optic nerve to the brain. And the brain will help us as it translates the image into something we can understand. In order to receive information from the environment, we are equipped with sense organs such as eye, ear, and nose. Each sense organ is part of a sensory system which receives sensory inputs and transmits sensory information to the brain. Three types of visual perception theory. which is the first one is not enough sensory information, which is called as top-down processing or Gregory. And the second one is it have enough sensory information, which is called as direct perception, Gibson, or if it is too much sensory information in the environment, it is called as selective attention or tracement. Bottom-up processing is also known as data-driven processing because perception begins with the stimulus itself. Processing is carried out in one direction, from the retina to the visual cortex, with each successive stage in the visual pathway carrying out ever more complex analysis of the input. Top-down processing refers to the use of contextual information in pattern recognition. For example, understanding difficult handwriting is easier when reading complex sentences than when reading single and isolated words. This is because the meaning of the surrounding words provide a context to aid understanding.
Perception. Perception is finding out, interpretation, analysis, and integration of stimuli by sense organs and brain. Auditory perception. Auditory perception is the ability to perceive and understand sound, usually with specific organ like human ears. Sound exists within the throat of the vibration that travels through the ear. Ear detects such a vibration and convert them into nerve impulse, then send them to the brain, where the brain is interrupted. Gustatory perception. Interruption between smell sense and taste sense, with stronger than other sense. Although no one have ever confirmed such psychological onto this study. We utilize science through nearly perspective on the task of confirming this specific comparing the control condition, the interaction between vision and olfaction, and one between vision and gestalten. Visual perception. The somatosensory cortex may be a part of the brain that receives and encodes sensory information from receptor of the whole body. Effective touch may be a sort of sensory information that elicits an emotional reaction and typically social in nature. Such information is rarely coded differently than other sensory information. Visual perception. Visual perception is the one of the sense, consisting of ability to detect light and interrupt it. If the perception is known as the sight has specific sensory system, the visual system. The major problem in visual perception is what people see is not simply translation of retinal stimuli. Thus, people interested in perception have long struggled to explain what visual perception processing does to create what we usually see.
Gestalt psychology and system. Gestalt is a psychology term which means unified whole. Gestalt psychology is a school of thought that looks at the human mind and behavior as a whole rather than the individual parts. Gestalt psychologies. Gestalt was first introduced in philosophy and psychology in 1890 by Christian von Raffles, a member of the school of Brentano. There are three main psychologies that were the most important representatives of Gestalt theory, which are Wolfgang Kohler, Kurt Kofka, and Max Wertheimer. Max Wertheimer has contributed in the development of Gestalt psychology when he purchased a toy stroboscope which displayed pictures in a rapid sequence to mimic the appearing movement. He later proposed the concept of the five phenomenon, the concept of isomorphism, a type of perceptual illusion that tricks eyes into thinking that still images are actually moving. There are 6 principles of Gestalt, which are closure, continuity, similarity, figure ground, proximity, and symmetry. The first principle is closure. Closure is the idea that the brain will fill in the missing parts of an image to create a whole. For example, from this image, it can be perceived as a football, though the figure is few pentagons placed randomly without complete lines, and the logo of Starbucks can be perceived that it was taken from the image of a mermaid. Continuity. The principle of continuity proposes that the human eye will follow the smoothest path when following something, and it will continue traveling in that direction until it encounters another object. For example, the use of the dashed stroke in the product relies on the principle of continuity as to be perceived as a solid line, and the eyes will follow along that dotted path. Similarity, the notion that objects were placed with similar characteristics in a group. For example, the shop tags and the navigational system strengthen the perception of groups because they have similar characteristics. Figure ground. Figure ground is referred to as positive or negative space, the positive being the object and the negative referring to the space. For example, this poster of Batman, the lighter and darker colors can influence what is viewed as the figure and what is viewed as the ground. Proximity. Proximity refers to objects that are close together being perceived as a group. For example, the shop tabs and checkout information form two distinct groups because of the law of proximity. And lastly, symmetry. The brain will perceive ambiguous shapes in as simple a manner as possible. The law of symmetry and order is also known as Prägnanz, the German word for good figure. For example of these, a monochrome version of the Olympic logo is seen as a series of overlapping circles rather than a collection of curved lines, and symmetry on McDonald's logo. Other example, in this poster shows one half as a bike wheel and one half as a manhole cover with a different texture and color, resembled a symmetrical figure.
We move on to the last topic of optical illusion. This topic is one of interesting topic in psychology. There is a quote related to optical illusion, which is, the brain didn't actually evolve to see the world the way it is. The brain has evolved to see the world it is useful to see. This statement was made by Dr. Violotto, a world-renowned neuroscientist that have many works on optical illusions. To put in simpler terms, optical illusion occurs when our eyes and brain process an abnormal situation from what we usually see. When we are seeing something, our brain constantly defines and recalibrates the norm in every visual situation. There are three main icons in optical illusion field. They are Joseph Jastrow, which is famous for rabbit-like illusion, Edgar Rubin for his Rubin base, and Erwin Moring, famously known for all our young Roman illustration. As for the types of optical illusion, the big three are literal illusions, physiological illusions, and cognitive illusions. Literal illusions is an image produced by smaller images which are not in any way connected to the larger overall image created. As for physiological illusions, physiological effects arise as the visual system is overstimulated, often appearing as illusions during long-term exposure of bright light sources. Last but not least is the cognitive illusions. Cognitive illusions is what the subconscious mind thinks and how it relates one object to another. A cognitive visual illusion uncovers what the brain is inferring and thinking about something that has not been explained. There are four types of cognitive illusions. There are ambiguous illusion, distortion illusion, paradox illusion, and fiction illusion. That's all from us. Thank you.